Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is at its best with Shadow, a surprising counterbalance and a compliment to Sonic. Shadow's character has more to offer since Sonic has already grown so much, making Sonic mostly plot device for Shadow's story. If this was Shadow's movie instead of Sonic's, how would it fare? And you know what? I think it would have done better if it was called Shadow the Hedgehog and it was a movie solely based around Shadow being the main character and not a side character. But that doesn't take away from the Sonic experience. I think that the people who have already enjoyed the first two movies, like myself, are going to enjoy the third one. And if you're looking to get into the series, don't jump straight into Shadow the Hedgehog. Even though it isn't a bad one to start with, go ahead and start from the beginning. It'll give you more appreciation for what the series is and what it's trying to contribute. And if you have any kids that are really into Sonic the Hedgehog right now, this would be a great time to bring them into the series. These movies are chock full of Easter eggs from the video games, subtle references that I think a lot of people miss out, even just how the characters move or the sound effects. There is a lot of love and tribute that goes into these movies, and it is very appreciated by the fans, and they continue to favor the fans in that way. And that is the main reason why this movie continues to succeed over and over again, even beating out Lion King and showing Disney, hey, this is how you adapt something into live action. Raking in $25.8 billion in domestic box offices alone. Now, let's go ahead and do some critical thinking here. This isn't going to be for the faint of heart. I'm going to really dig into this movie, and we're going to go into some spoilers. So you've been warned. As of right now, let's see what other people are looking at this movie as. With IMDb at a 7.6 rating overall, with I think over 3,000 people rating it. Popularity down to past the top 25%, with other movies like Red One and 28 Years Later and Wicked being the top contenders. Now, Sonic the Hedgehog is a niche movie catering to kids like Moana, which is at 10 spot. But whenever we look over here at Metacritic, you see that the general score is looking at like a 7.5, whereas like the critics are basing it at a 59. We'll get into that here in a little bit. And then on Rotten Tomatoes, it seems like both the critics and the fans are enjoying the movie itself. The biggest observation in the Sonic 3 movie is the fact that it is a complete story. It tells a story from beginning to end, and you get to watch the characters go on this journey, which is why the critics are probably looking at it so highly. Or at least it doesn't get lost in its sauce. It doesn't get too far off track from its premise, where revenge isn't the answer, and you are going to feel hurt from losing loved ones, but don't let that pain change who you are. It's literally stated in the first act of the movie and spelled out to Sonic almost verbatim. Now, this type of exposition is suitable for a kid's movie, especially when you're trying to take a mythological character like Sonic and turn him into a figure for kids to learn from. And he's not just some mascot used for some Coco Melon type of stuff, though this acts as a double-edged sword. The reason why I think that this movie should be called Shadow the Hedgehog instead of Sonic is because Shadow brings all the character, he brings all the drama, and he brings the growth. Most of the time when Sonic is on screen, he is telling jokes. He is literally explaining the plot to us. It feels like we're watching a Fast and Furious movie because a lot of times the characters stand in a circle and tell us what is happening and what is going to happen or what has just happened. The only characters that don't do that is Dr. Eggman and Shadow. And that is because they are going through kind of their own hero's journey. They're going through their own process of character growth. So whenever we see action with them, it has purpose. It is taking the story further where the dialogue cannot do so. When Shadow first escapes his imprisonment, he immediately starts attacking people. He doesn't try to reason with them. He doesn't even try to spell out what his revenge is. We get to tell what type of character he is from the get-go. And it is doing so in a way that is fan service. When he meets Sonic and the team, he is mad that they jumped out of a gun helicopter. He then sees them as a threat and sees how far his morality has dropped, how far he is willing to go for what he desires now that he doesn't even care to listen to anyone if you associate with them. Even though I'm in the wrong for the way that I'm acting, I am still going to act out. These are establishing moments for Shadow, but even further is whenever Shadow hurts someone that Sonic loves. We see that Shadow realizes he's become the monster that he is vowed to destroy. And he realizes just how much more in common him and Sonic have other than being hedgehogs. When we look at Dr. Eggman, yeah, he has a more goofy track record than Shadow's. It's less serious and brooding, but those moments of action, the moments where he's dancing in the lasers with his grandfather, show just what it means to him to have someone that he can relate to him, someone that acts just as he does. And it's the equivalent of playing catch with your father. At the same time, when he's testing his grandfather's brilliance, he's also seeing if this is true. Is there someone out there that can be on the same level of intellect that he is, because he has been so alone for so long? You see how wary he is to even move forward in such a thing, but still does because it is so good for him, or at least it feels good for him. But on the flip side, when you look at his grandfather, instead of interacting with the world like how Shadow gets to, his interactions are with Dr. Eggman. And whenever he betrays Dr. Eggman, that shows us, the audience, just how far they're willing to go to achieve their goals. The antagonists of this movie outshine the heroes. And it's because the heroes spend most of their time telling jokes or actually setting up the plot for the antagonists to grow. And we don't really get to see Sonic have this journey. We get to see what the premise is in the first act, and that's the very beginning, the setup. But then he goofs off, he has to run into Shadow, he then has to stop Shadow because he's the hero and the plot commands him to. Second act is him setting up Shadow to grow. But it isn't until we reach the end of the second act and we move into the third act where we finally get to see Sonic's growth. And I think that's the weakest part of the movie, is that Sonic as a character has grown so much from the other two films. There's not really much more we can do with him in this movie, that we have to wait till Shadow actually causes issues, because these aren't really character-driven stories, they're plot-driven stories as long as Sonic is at the helm. And it could have been a fully character-driven story if Shadow was at the helm. And I really think that they were testing out these types of things whenever they did the Knuckles spin-off TV show, which, if you were going back and watching everything, I don't recommend the Knuckles TV show. Even though I've seen things where people say, if you don't love me at my Knuckles, then you don't deserve me at my Sonic 3, I think it's the other way around. I don't think anyone really deserves Knuckles. I think we could have all done better with Knuckles, but I do think the idea of pushing Sonic films that have different character names, especially if those characters are written well enough to hold the movie, and having Sonic more on the sidelines can fit really well, but it is his franchise. Taking some inspiration from Cosmonaut Quickie, we're going to do a quick review over Knuckles because I don't want to make a video of that on its own. Looking at Knuckles, it's at 6.2 of IMDb. It's also looking at around a 6 from both critics and viewers, consumers for Metacritic, and then Rotten Tomatoes, you got like a 7 and 67. Sounds like the movie is just good in comparison to what people have to think. I might be the outlier here. I think when it comes to the Knuckles TV show, really, the main character isn't Knuckles. It's this guy right here. It's Wade. And it's his journey, and Knuckles is kind of on the sidelines, but the show tries to trick you in saying like, hey, Knuckles is going to learn something from all of this, but he really doesn't. Nothing really grows from Knuckles because he's kind of already a developed character. It has the same issue with Sonic Hedgehog 3, and a lot of the issues come with the camera work in the show. The characters don't really look like they're talking to Knuckles or talking to each other at sometimes, like their actors aren't even in the same room with one another, even though they're supposed to be. It's really corny, and if you love the Sony kind of Spider-Man villain movies like Venom and Morbius, It's on the same level as those, but Knuckles is like a 5 out of 10, wouldn't recommend. Sonic does well in giving us great antagonists, fantastic villains where we have to watch them grow and actually turn into something else. On top of that, it still tells the same Sonic type of story that we've gotten from the other movies. You have a cohesive story that sticks to its premise, knows what it wants to do from the very foundation, from the very beginning. You also have tons, and I mean tons, of fantastic fan service. Even though it may go off from what was originally made for the characters, it still stays true to the idea of what the fans first fell in love with. Which is why I have to give Sonic the Hedgehog 3 a 7 out of 10. Until next time, guys, play nice. Hey, I'm Mario. I like playing video games, watching movies, and Dungeons and Dragons. If you keep getting me in your suggested videos, or you're watching this video right here, consider subscribing. It goes a long way. Thank you.